Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me is Mike. Mike,
Hey,
we're
everybody.
continuing a bit of a conversation we had yesterday. We talked about One World Under Doom, an event series that me and you kind of felt symbolized everything that was wrong with comic books. But
Yeah,
the main issue that gets touched on that issues
got a
in those
lot of
series.
comments. We got a lot of
Yeah,
comments.
got some feedback on it, and we always appreciate that. And again, on these folks' videos, if you guys watch these folks, if you think what we're saying is stupid, that's okay. Put it in the comments. We're not here to pretend we're the experts or that we know everything. It's great to see other perspectives, and we don't want
I
things to be an echo chamber.
I've been known to say stupid stuff. So, uh,
Um, so what we're going to talk a little bit about. There's another comic that came out this week, Ultimates number 18, and the Ultimate Universe is kind of ramping to its conclusion. And the comic book is largely just a speech from Tony Stark to the regular, average, everyday citizen. Very emblematic of like V's speech in V for Vendetta, where he's kind of talking to the populace about rising up and all that. Point revolution, all that stuff. Look, it's not a perfect equivalency. But Mike, we're seeing this more and more and more and more in comics. And again, if you liked Ultimates 18, good for you. Right? I'm not here to say it was a bad comic book. I just think it's a weird comic book. Um, Realism and comic books, where these two meet. I would supposition, Mike, that it doesn't work because comic books, you have to shut your brain off for these to work. To go to a world where there's dimensions and portals and Annihilus and a Fantastic Four and Galactus and Heralds and Infinity Stones and all these multiverses, trying to then pivot to go, let's talk about global energy crises. I, you got Tony Stark, you got Reed Richards. Reed Richards can create an ultimate nullifier in 5 minutes. I think if he existed, was in a world where there was a food shortage, he would have solved that. And so I
yeah.
think that's where these issues don't resonate in Marvel or DC because you already have to shut your brain off a little bit for these to work. And so then when you clash real world stuff with comic book stuff, it doesn't work. Do you feel the same on that? Do you think it's just the way it's written? Why do you feel this either does or doesn't work, Mike?
Well, I'm with you on the shutting my brain off to read some of these because all that kind of stuff. When I need an escape, I want to see superheroes fighting bad guys. And I think I think for the most part. This is, they're taking a tip from, some great stuff that's happened in the past when people have kind of blended this, like we said in the last episode, with a very deft touch and kind of handing it out kind of softly and speaking to it in the storyline to raise a point in a fictional universe. And some of the masters did it really well. And but now it seems to be too heavy-handed. And I like my fiction to be my escape. And some of the best-selling comics, I know the Ultimates has been doing really well, but
Mm-hmm.
some of the best-selling comics right now have nothing to do with that. You have the Absolute Batman,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really touch on that. And Conan, of course, doesn't touch
Yeah.
on that at all. I mean, it's just pure fantasy. So, I mean, and there's just good storytelling. And I would, for my taste, I think for the vast majority, the middle of your readership really enjoys comic books for those kind of things. And maybe once in a while, but it seems, throw in something that has, a little extra in it. It can go off the rails, and it can hit one way or the other really badly. And especially now in this very divided, volatile time, you would be wise to, either tread very lightly and masterfully walk that tightrope that is now even tighter, or just kind of stay away from it and give us the good old fashioned entertainment that sells lots of comics.
Well, I think the thing is, you raise some interesting points. There are people who will look at absolute Batman and go, "Well, Batman doesn't have money anymore, so clearly this is a comment on one percenters." And
Yeah.
maybe, maybe. I would also say if you're trying to glean from absolute Batman real world principles about economic inequality, maybe having a 7 foot bodybuilder who wears a bat costume with a portable axe on his chest and drives a like 900-foot construction vehicle as his Batmobile. I don't know how much we're getting there that we can glean real world principles. Once
But
Killer Croc shows up,
but that's the kind of, touch that makes it like those that want to see into that and enjoy that part of the story can
you
grab
can't, and
that part
that's
of it. And but the rest of the comic is just,
it's
good
just a Batman adventure.
Batman adventuring. Yeah.
And like you said with the shut your brain off thing, that's not to say that these can't be written well or they can't be
Oh yeah.
written, to where when we say shut your brain off, I think the thing is it's about you plug out of the real world and you plug into this Marvel universe, this DC universe. I think it's why we like this stuff. You and I have talked this on videos before, but there are great issues that deal with real world stuff, right? Amazing Spider-Man. I know Stan had to publish one outside of the Comics Code Authority because it was going to deal with an overdose for Harry Osborn. I don't know anybody who goes, that's the greatest issue of Amazing Spider-Man ever. The
Yeah.
reason that issue resonated was you had 60, 70 issues before that of building Peter Parker's world, of these fun adventures, of who Harry Osborn is, Green Goblins, and all this fun stuff. And then you plug a very specific issue that could hit a character in this universe, and like you feel that as a reader because it's like, oh wow, that's Harry Osborn. Even still, I don't think Spider-Man would have benefited from every issue tackling stuff like that. And again, I think even though that issue seminal, important, I don't know anybody who's like, you know what made me love Spider-Man as a character, and my all-time favorite issue is the Harry Osborn drug overdose comic book.
Right.
The same way that look, I think that Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams are two incredible masters of this craft, and Green Lantern, Green Arrow is a comic book that more blatantly than most dealt with real world issues. However, that was the exception, not the rule. The
Right.
majority of your DC comics were still Batman tackling Ra's al Ghul and Superman fighting Mr. Mxyzptlk and Wonder Woman fighting Cheetah and Flash taking on the Rogues. You
I
had
think,
one specific comic that was aimed at that, and that's why it worked as opposed to what we have now. Go ahead, Mike.
well, the editor in chief was Julius Schwartz, or was it Carmine then? But anyway, you know, they decided, sure, Denny, go with that story. And like you said, the rest of the universe was, telling their normal stories. And
Hmm.
I think a good stewardship of the editorial board would be to like, okay, you want to tell that story, next year there's a slot, we'll do that. But the rest of the universe should be good old fun and games and good escapism and superhero adventuring.
What I
And
think where this doesn't work as much is it's half measures. The reason I don't think these political messaging ones work as well with Marvel or DC, the prevalence of indie comics that drop the pretense completely and just deal with the issue
yeah,
will work for those readers. With Marvel and DC, I think at this point we have a specific readership left who enjoys colorful superheroes fighting bad guys. And if you want a real deep dive into economic inequality, or a real deep dive into political discord, or a real deep dive into how do you deal with modern day fascism, or whatever, there's an indie comic that drops the pretense and doesn't have Bruce Wayne in a black and blue suit that's like got bat themed boots on dealing with it. It instead deals with that stuff directly. And I
yeah.
think this is the biggest reason it doesn't work, in my opinion, when they do it is, and I bring up a comic like Civil War. Civil War was a really well received comic when it came out. I personally have always hated it, even though well drawn, and I'll admit, well written. it had to contort Tony Stark to be an absolute jerk to make it work, to make its point about, and I believe at the time that was addressing the Patriot Act that was going on. And
Yeah.
so to make that work, you had to take a hero in Tony Stark, who for 40 years at that point had been a good guy who was noble, who had overcome, who now is just an absolute jerk, who's willing to kill other heroes because they won't go along with the Marvel Patriot Act.
I think
Reed
you bring up
Richards is even willing to go against his wife and family. And it's like, no, go ahead, Mike.
you bring up a really good point because in order to make this happen, you do have to contort these heroes who have 60, 80 years of continuity and history that we've all absorbed. And it does kind of, you have to contort them into a storyline like that and make it make sense. And and most of the time it doesn't. It's better with the indies because they can start fresh and like, oh, I know this guy's a jerk. Okay, well, let's see what he does with his jerkness, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and let's see how this story turns out. But with, characters like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Iron Man, it really takes the characters down a peg. And also, I think there is a little bit of um, enthusiasm that I think is worn off now and is wearing thin with new creatives and writers writing stories where they just totally deconstructed everybody and, you know, reinvented them and mashed them up and turned them into something else and spit them out again. And,
Mm-hmm.
some of that was fun. Some of it was crazy. Most of it was like, what are you doing here? And so I do feel like that we're coming to the end of that. And these kind of real world stories are just very indicative of that whole thing.
Well, I think it's weird in that, like, one of the big ones that gets addressed a ton in comic books is economic inequality piece. That's probably the ultimates largely has been a lecture a lot about billionaires and misuse of resources. And look, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen in the real world. I will say it's a lot less effective in a universe where there's time travel and a soldier from the 40s who is unfrozen in time and Hulks and all these different things. Because to believe that that's still the prevalent issue in that universe, where you literally have the ruling class of the universe as an alternate dimension, Reed Richards, who is stuck in a time portal that is like, what are we doing? This is still the main issue we're grappling. And I'll even say with Absolute Batman, I've seen people comment like, oh, I like this so much better because he feels so much more relatable because he's not a wealthy Batman. And it's like, look, he still has a suit that has like every gadget you'd need. He has a giant Batmobile. He rarely runs into issues where his money has been an issue. And it's like,
Right.
really, he does the same task of running around and stopping criminals. So, really, because he goes home to a cheap apartment instead of Wayne Manor, that's really the divide. And again, you can't to criticize Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark because they're billionaires. Look, there are legit critiques of real world billionaires, 100%. I'm not here to say there isn't. However, if one of our real world billionaires was throwing on a metal suit or an iron suit, flying around, stopping nuclear weapons, fighting the Mandarin, and like stopping Thanos, yeah, I'm not going to give that guy crap. And
Yeah.
like
You might cut him a
that's the
little
most
slack,
unbelievable thing
right?
in these
Yeah.
comics
Yeah.
is they'll want to do these. Iron Man has become an unreadable comic book, and this is where I'm excited Josh Williamson's taking it over because maybe it will become good again. But the comic book
Josh
so
is a good writer.
often has to like rub Tony Stark's nose and like, you suck, you're rich, you're a... That's like Tony Stark saves the world on a weekly basis in the comic books.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of okay that he's got money.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm looking at what Tony Stark's life looks like,
And
I
same with
think he's coming
Batman.
out ahead.
And same with
And
Batman, right? With Bruce Wayne's a
same with
billionaire.
Batman. And I think the other part is, like you said, you have to shut your brain off to some of this stuff because you then create a world where the same critiques that you want to deal with, if you solved them logically with the heroes, they wouldn't make sense either. So,
No.
for instance, if Superman in the DC universe decided, you know what, all these critiques, everybody's right. I am going to destroy all the weapons in the world, and I am going to do all. People, we accuse Superman of imperialism. He took
Yeah.
over. Who is he to subjugate all these cultures? Why does he get to change people's free will? You would just flip it on its head and have a new set of complaints. And there's been comics that dealt with that. Squadron Supreme that Marvel published. Trying to remember the writer on that one, but that one dealt with like, what if the Justice League decided to take over the universe? Injustice did the
Yeah.
same thing as well. It's just the reason I think this stuff doesn't work is you can never find the right balance. And that, like that comic book pointed out, Storm, who is this very socially progressive, aggressive character in the comic books, who is always on, the more progressive side of things. Hey, you could go make it rain. If you're really worried about economic inequality, Storm, stop lecturing the billionaire and go make it rain in these places where they can't grow crops and food. Problem solved. And it's like, but it's a stupid critique of Storm because it just doesn't work. It's an imperfect correlation between the two. I think this has also affected comic book movies. I think Marvel tried to do some of this stuff where they tried to put more real world stuff in it. And I think, again, the immersion just breaks on what these are. Because at the end of the day, it's the universal concepts that sell stuff. It is the good versus evil stuff. And I think, Michael, I think we can close this out with this. For me, what comic books have always represented, it's not about specific issues. It's about morals. It's about teaching people you do the right thing. And some of these are really simplistic. But I think the reason it works is one, you are in a very simple medium of, let's be honest, if you take this too serious, throwing on red spandex and running around saving the world, you're pretty stupid. Like we wouldn't if anybody did what any of these heroes do in the real world, we would think they're nuts. We'd lock them up in an insane asylum.
There have been a couple that try.
Yeah. And then it's where the Alan Moore Watchmens and those kind of
Yeah.
things go, where it presents the characters very
Yeah.
differently. But you can't have that these heroes are these oh so noble characters that we all love. But also we go realism because if Superman existed in the real world, we'd freaking be terrified of him. If
Yeah.
as friendly as Spider-Man is, if I went outside right now and there was a dude in a blue and red costume swinging around perched on a rooftop, like that's freaking insane. What are we doing here? And I just think we can get back to comic books saying something, but it doesn't need to be specific about the real world. You can say something like, great power, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's a fine moral to teach people.
Yeah.
To me, that's where we're off. I think we'd be better if we just got back to very basic concepts of good and evil and stuff, because this medium is based on that. Do you feel that same way, Mike, or do you feel there's more nuance
100%.
to it that could work?
100%. And like I said in the last episode, every once in a while you can have on a very special episode.
Yeah, like Fresh
You
Prince
could
of Bel
you
Air
could
always did that.
you
Yeah,
could try that, but
kind of
but
thing.
save that for your heavy hitters and choose your characters wisely. But this stuff really works best in the indies when they're drawing up characters from scratch. It's always been problematic with the superheroes and all the history that they have. Hey, because we love these guys.
Hmm.
And we've grown to love them over the years, and we love these stories. And yeah, I think the basic storytelling is always the best. I mean, you can come up with. I mean, this is a huge imaginative world to explore, and it's great fiction when it's great, and try and keep the real world stuff to a minimum because we're trying to escape from that right now. We get enough of that already.
Yeah, no, and everything's so polarized anyway. I think
Yeah,
that's the other thing where it's an imperfect. I think it's just an imperfect medium to deliver, not comic books, but Marvel and DC. Again, I
yeah,
think if you really want that kind of stuff, it will always be more effective in an indie book. Or I think even if Marvel and DC want to do it, V for Vendetta is really effective because of the character V. If
yeah.
V was Batman, that comic doesn't work. If Watchmen was Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, and Batman, it doesn't work. It works because it was Rorschach and Dr. Manhattan and the
Yeah.
comedian instead. And so I think we just gotta find a better balance or find a better way to do it. As always, folks, let us know what you think down below. Again, if you disagree with us, completely okay. We are not here to pretend we're the experts or that our opinion is the only right one. In fact, we like it when you see you guys disagree because we don't want this to be an echo chamber. One of the things that
Right.
me and Mike started this channel on is like we miss the old school conversations that used to be in comic book stores before everything was the big two suck and this is why this comic's awful. It was
Right.
great to used to have these kind of debates and these kind of conversations, and that was the whole point in us creating this channel was to try to get some semblance of that back. But let us know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching, folks. God bless you. You have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.